Hello, 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 and welcome to the last part of my Art of War read through. I think we're doing like the last four, chapter 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So, yeah, I think it's five um, chapters. We have done laying plans, waging war, attack by stratagem, tactical dispositions, energy, weak points and strong, maneuvering and variation in tactics. What we have left and what we will be reading tonight is the army on the march, terrain, the 9 situations, the attack by fire and the use of spies. So, just to recap, I've been reading this because Attack on Titan is starting again soon, and it's just to gain a little bit better understanding of the art of war. Once again, this is still written by a person. Probably it may have had multiple contributors. We don't know for sure. But still, it was put together by people who were in a war, but it was translated and retranslated by other people. So, do I expect you or me to agree with everything that this person says or may have said? No. But I do think it's important to. Because Attack on Titan deals so much with war and stuff, I think it's important to consider what is said and think about it for ourselves, and then give our own opinions, contribute our own thoughts, talk about it. What is life without communication? Um, but yeah, mainly I started reading it because, as I've said, people were saying, "Oh, I can't have an opinion on this. Oh, I know nothing about that." And then I said, "Well, let's read it then. Let me learn." And yeah, I feel like a lot of what I was trying to get at is also expanded on this in this book, but it's also given me other things to consider and think about. There's one thing in particular from last week that I was like, But you know what? I should have been making notes. I did a highlight, but this is not something. This is not something that you read once and then you remember everything. So I'll probably end up reading it again in the future. But okay, let's get started. This Sunday, Attack on Titan is starting, by the way. It's coming back. And wait, I have this chair thingy now, but I made it go up too high, but now I don't know how to make it go further back. There has to be like a button or something, right? Nope. I can't find the button. I'll have to ask Hanku tomorrow. But yeah, Attack on Titan is starting this Sunday, and I'll be posting my reactions on YouTube as well as my review. But for now, let us read The Army on the March, Chapter 9. Sun Tzu said, "We come now to the question of encamping the army and observing signs of the enemy. Pass quickly over mountains and keep in the neighborhood of valleys." Okay? Camp in high places facing the sun. Do not climb heights in order to fight. So much for mountain warfare. After crossing a river, you should get far away from it. When an invading force crosses a river in its onward march, do not advance to meet it in midstream. It will be best to let half the army get across and then deliver your attack. If you are anxious to fight, you should not go to meet the invader near a river which he has to cross. Moor your craft higher up than the enemy and facing the sun. Do not move upstream to meet the enemy. So much for river warfare. In crossing salt marshes, your sole concern should be to get over them quickly without any delay. If forced to fight in a salt marsh, you should have water and grass near you, and get your back to a clump of trees. So much for operations in salt marshes. In dry level country, take up an easily accessible position with rising ground to your right and on your rear so that the danger may be in front and safety lie behind. So much for campaigning in flat country. These are the 4 useful branches of military knowledge which enabled the Yellow Emperor to vanquish 4 several sovereigns. All armies prefer high ground to low and sunny places to dark. I can understand high ground to low and sunny places to dark. Oopsie. Sunny places to dark is probably like not ninjas, because they want to operate in the dark. If you are careful of your men and camp on hard ground, the army will be free from disease of every kind, and this will spell victory. Hard ground, okay? When you come to a hill or a bank, occupy the sunny side with the slope on your right rear. Thus you will at once act for the benefit of your soldiers and utilize the natural advantages of the ground. When, in consequence of heavy rains up country, a river which you wish to ford is swollen and flecked with foam, you must wait until it subsides. Country in which there are precipitous cliffs with torrents running between, deep natural hollows, confined places, tangled thickets, quagmires and crevices, should be left with all possible speed and not approached. While we keep away from such places, we should get the enemy to approach them. So I kind of herd them there. While we face them, we should let the enemy have them on his rear. If in the neighborhood of your camp there should be any hilly country, ponds surrounded by aquatic grass, hollow basins filled with reeds, or woods with thick undergrowth, they must be carefully rooted out and searched, for these are places where men in ambush or insidious spies are likely to be lurking. When the enemy is close at hand and remains quiet, he is relying on the natural strength of his position. When he keeps aloof and tries to provoke a battle, he is anxious for the other side to advance. When the enemy is close at hand and remains quiet, he is relying on the natural strength of his position. When he keeps aloof and tries to provoke battle, he is anxious for the other side to advance. If his place of encampment is easy of access, he is tendering a bait. That's quite important. Bait. Bait is like, in lots of, at least anime fights that I've seen, there's always, or not always, but oftentimes, someone is used as bait. And that's why it's really important, because when you get cocky, you either fall for the bait or you think like, well, I don't care that it's bait. On the other hand, if you're at least aware that it's bait, you can approach it more smartly. But yeah, that's also difficult. Like, if someone baits you and you know that it's bait, what if it's just their mistake? But do you really want to stake your lives on a possible mistake by them? I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation. If his place of encampment is easy of access, he is tendering a bait. Movement amongst the trees of a forest shows that enemy is advancing. The appearance of a number of screens in the midst of thick grass means that enemy wants to make us suspicious. The rising of birds in their flight is a sign of an ambush. Startled beasts indicate that a sudden attack is coming. When there is dust rising in a high column, it is the sign of chariots advancing. When the dust is low but spreading over a wide area, it betokens the approach of infantry. When it branches out in different directions, it shows that parties have been sent to collect firewood. A few clouds of dust moving to and fro signify that the army is encamping. Humble words and increased preparations are signs that the enemy is about to advance. Violent language and driving forward as if to the attack are signs that he will retreat. When the light chariots come out first and take up a position on the wings, it is a sign that the enemy is forming for battle. Peace proposals unaccompanied by a sworn covenant indicate a plot. Ooh, that's something interesting. When the light chariots come out first and take up a position on the wings, the sign the enemy is forming for battle. Peace proposals unaccompanied by a sworn covenant indicates a plot. When there is much running about and the soldiers fall into rank, it means that the critical moment has come. When some are seen advancing and some retreating, it is a lure. When the soldiers stand leaning on their spears, they are faint from want of food. If those who are sent to draw water begin drinking by themselves, the army is suffering from thirst. Oh. So these are like things that you could let your spies look out for. If the enemy sees an advantage to be gained and makes no effort to secure it, the soldiers are exhausted. If birds gather on any spot, it is unoccupied. Clamor by night betokens nervousness. If there is a disturbance in the camp, the general's authority is weak. That's important to take note of. If there is a disturbance in the camp, the general's authority is weak. If banners and flags are shifted about, sedition is afoot. If the officer, I don't know what sedition means, to be honest. If the officers are angry, it means that the men are weary. When an army feeds its horses with grain and kills its cattle for food, and when the men do not hang their cooking pots over the campfires, showing that they will not return to their tents, you may know that they are determined to fight to the death. The sight of men whispering together in small knots or speaking in subdued tones points to disaffection amongst the rank and file. Too frequent rewards signify that the enemy is at the end of his resources. Too many punishments betray a condition of dire distress. To begin by bluster, but afterwards to take fright at the enemy's numbers, shows a supreme lack of intelligence. When envoys are sent with compliments in their mouths, it is a sign that the enemy wishes for a truce. If the enemy's troops march up angrily and remain facing hours for a long time without either joining battle or taking themselves off again, the situation is one that demands great vigilance and circumspection. If our troops are no more in number than the enemy, that is amply sufficient. It only means that no direct attack can be made. What we can do is simply to concentrate all our available strength, keep a close watch on the enemy, and obtain reinforcements. He who exercises no forethought but makes light of his opponents is sure to be captured by them. If soldiers are punished before they have grown attached to you, they will not prove submissive, and unless submissive, then will be practically useless. If, when the soldiers have become attached to you, punishments are not enforced, they will still be useless. Therefore, soldiers must be treated in the first instance with humanity, but kept under control by means of iron discipline. This is a certain road to victory. That is quite important. Soldiers must be treated in the first instance with humanity, but kept under control by means of iron discipline. If in training soldiers commands are habitually enforced, the army will be well disciplined. If in training soldiers commands are habitually enforced, the army will be well disciplined. If not, its discipline will be bad. If a general shows confidence in his men, but always insists on his orders being obeyed, the gain will be mutual. Chapter 10, Terrain. That kind of felt to me like the first half of it was more terrain, but it was about the army on the march. The next part is Chapter 10, Terrain. Sun Tzu said, "We may distinguish 6 kinds of terrain, to wit, accessible ground, entangling ground, temporizing ground, narrow passes, precipitous heights, positions at a great distance from the enemy. Ground which can be freely traversed by both sides is called accessible. With regard to ground of this nature, Be before the enemy and occupying the raised and sunny spots, and carefully guard your line of supplies. Then you will be able to fight with advantage. Why? Wait. Oh, so fresh. Okay. With regard to ground of this nature, be before the enemy and occupying raised and sunny spots, and carefully guard your line of supplies. Then you will be able to fight with advantage. Ground which can be abandoned but is hard to reoccupy is called entangling. From a position of this sort, if the enemy is unprepared, you may sally forth and defeat him. But if the enemy is prepared for your coming, and you fail to defeat him, then return being impossible, disaster will ensue. When the position is such that neither side will gain by making the first move, it is called temporizing ground. In a position of this sort, even though the enemy should offer us an attractive bait, it will be advisable not to stir forth, but rather to retreat, thus enticing the enemy in his turn. Then, when part of his army has come out, we may deliver our attack with advantage. Hi, Toshi. Hello. Do you want to sit on my lap? With regard to narrow passes, if you can occupy them first. No. Don't put your knees and nails in this dress. No. Wait, Toshi. Sit, put there. Here, come. You can knead it if the blanket is on it, but not the dress, please. What are you looking for? Okay. Narrow passes, if you can occupy them first, let them be strongly garrisoned and await the advent of the enemy. Should the army forestall you in occupying a pass, do not go after him if the pass is fully garrisoned, but only if it is weakly garrisoned. With regard to your precipitous heights, if you are beforehand with your adversary, you should occupy the raised and sunny spots, and there wait for him to come up. If the enemy has occupied them before you, do not follow him, but retreat and try to entice him away. If you are situated at a great distance from the enemy, and the strength of two armies is equal, it is not easy to provoke a battle, and fighting will be to your disadvantage. These 6 are the principles connected with earth. The general who has attained a responsible post must be careful to study them. Now, an army is exposed to 6 calamities, not arising from natural causes, but from faults for which the general is responsible. Okay, this is quite important. What are you doing? An army is exposed to several calamities, not arising from natural causes, but from faults which the general is responsible. So these are flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and rout. So these are the calamities that could befall an army, but is not a natural fault, it is a fault of the general. Other conditions being equal, if one force is hurled against another 10 times its size, the result will be the flight of the former. Okay. When the common soldiers are too strong and the officers too weak, the result is insubordination. Okay, so there's no respect. When the officers are too strong and the common soldiers too weak, the result is collapse. When the higher officers are angry and insubordinate, and on meeting the enemy give battle on their own account from a feeling of resentment, before the commander-in-chief can tell whether or not he is in a position to fight, the result is ruin. When the general is weak and without authority, when his orders are not clear and distinct, when there are no fixed duties assigned to officers and men, and the ranks are formed in a slovenly, haphazard manner, the result is utter disorganization. When a general, unable to estimate the enemy's strength, allows an inferior force to engage a larger one, or hurls a weak detachment against a powerful one, and neglects to place picked soldiers in the front rank, the result must be rout. These are 6 ways of courting defeat, which must be carefully noted by the general who has attained a responsible post. The natural formation of the country is the soldier's best ally, but a power of estimating the adversary, of controlling the forces of victory, and of shrewdly calculating difficulties, dangers, and distances constitutes the test of a great general. She's like kneading the blanket. Why are you kneading? Knead. He who knows these things and in fighting puts his knowledge into practice will win his battles. He who knows them not, nor practices them, will surely be defeated. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight, even though the ruler forbid it. If fighting will not result in victory, then you must not fight, even at the ruler's bidding. That's quite interesting. Let me just... The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. A general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look upon them as your beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death. If, however, you are indulgent, but unable to make your authority felt, kind-hearted, but unable to enforce your commands, and incapable, moreover, of quelling disorder, then your soldiers must be likened to spoiled children. They are useless for any practical purpose. Indulgent, kind-hearted, incapable. If we know that our own men are in a condition to attack, but are unaware that the enemy is not open to attack, we have gone only halfway towards victory. If we know that the enemy is open to attack, but are unaware that our own men are not in a condition to attack, we have gone only halfway towards victory. If we know that the enemy is open to attack, and also know that our men are in a condition to attack, but are unaware that the nature of the ground makes fighting impracticable, we have still gone only halfway towards victory. Hence, the experienced soldier, once in motion, is never bewildered. Once he has broken camp, he is never at a loss. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and you know earth, you may take your victory complete. Okay, this one is a chapter that quite interests me just by the name, the 9 situations. Sun Tzu said, the art of war recognizes 9 varieties of ground: dispersive, facile, contentious, open ground, ground of intersecting highways, serious ground, difficult ground, hemmed-in ground, and desperate ground. When a chieftain is fighting in his own territory, it is dispersive ground. When he has penetrated into hostile territory, but to no great distance, it is facile ground. I don't know how to sit with you doing what you're doing. Ground, the possession of which imports great advantage to either side, is contentious ground. Ground on which each side has liberty of movement is open ground. Ground which forms the key to 3 contiguous states, so that he who occupies it first has most of the empire at his command, is a ground of intersecting highways. When an army has penetrated into the heart of a hostile country, leaving a number of fortified cities in its rear. What does fortified mean? Girl? Let's see here. Fortified. Provided with defensive works as protection against attack. Made stronger or more secure, a fortified city, fortified bridges. Okay, so made more secure. So, when an army has penetrated into the heart of a hostile country, leaving a number of fortified cities in its rear, it is serious ground. Mountain forests, rugged steeps, marshes and fens, all country that is hard to traverse. This is difficult ground. Ground which is reached through narrow gorges and from which we can only retire by tortuous paths, so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men. This is hemmed in ground. Ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. On dispersive ground, therefore, fight not. On facile ground, halt not. On contentious ground, attack not. On open ground, do not try to block the enemy's way. On the ground of intersecting highways, join hands with your allies. On serious ground, gather in plunder. In difficult ground, keep steadily on the march. On hemmed in ground, resort to stratagem. On desperate ground, fight. Those who were called skillful leaders of old knew how to drive a wedge between the enemy's front and rear, to prevent a cooperation between his large and small divisions, to hinder the good troops from rescuing the bad, the officers from rallying their men. When the enemy's men were united, they managed to keep them in disorder. When it was to their advantage, they made a forward move, when otherwise they stopped still. If asked how to cope with a great host of the enemy in orderly array, and on the point of marching to the attack, I should say, begin by seizing something which your opponent holds dear. Then he will be amenable to your will. What does that mean? How to cope with a great host of the enemy in orderly array and on the point of marching to the attack. Seize something which your opponent holds dear, then he will be amenable to your will. So let's say, for example, if we were to look at Attack on Titan, let's say they hold that Willy character dear, like he's this celebrity to them or whatever. So seize him, and then you have some bargaining power, negotiating, because you have something they hold dear and they will be amenable to your will. I guess that's how I understand it right now. Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness. Make your way by unexpected routes and attack unguarded spots. Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness. Make your way by unexpected routes and attack unguarded spots. The following are the principles to be observed by an invading force. The further you penetrate into a country, the greater will be the solidarity of your troops, and thus The defenders will not prevail against you. Make forays in fertile country in order to supply your army with food. What's a foray? A sudden attack into enemy territory, especially to obtain something. Okay. Where was I? Make forays in fertile country in order to supply your army with food. Carefully study the well-being of your men and do not overtax them. Concentrate your energy and hoard your strength. Keep your army continually on the move and devise unfathomable plans. This kind of makes me think of a show that I watched called The Ida 10 Deities Know Only Peace. So in that show, there's this part where one country is like building an army, but they're basically making the army like, they're teaching the army to go in, destroy, rape, kill, blah, 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 because there was a reason why they wanted to do that. But now I don't remember what it was, so I feel like I need to rewatch it. Luckily, as far as I remember, that army lost in the end. But anyway. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight. If they will face death, there is nothing they may not achieve. Officers and men alike will put forth their uttermost strength. Soldiers, when in desperate straits, lose the sense of fear. If there is no place of refuge, they will stand firm. If they are in hostile country, they will show a stubborn front. If there is no help for it, they will fight hard. Thus, without waiting to be marshaled, the soldiers will be constantly on the qui vive. Without waiting to be asked, they will do your will. Without restrictions, they will be faithful. Without giving orders, they can be trusted. Prohibit the taking of omens, and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. If our soldiers are not overburdened with money, it is not because they have a distaste for riches. If their lives are not unduly long, it is not because they are disinclined to longevity. On the day they are ordered out to battle, your soldiers may weep. Those sitting up bedewing their garments, and those lying down, letting the tears run down their cheeks. But let them once be brought to bay, and they will display the courage of Chu or a Kuei. The skillful tactician may be likened to the shuazhan. Now the shuazhan is a snake that is found in the Chang Mountains. Strike at its head, and you will be attacked by its tail. Strike at its tail, and you will be attacked by its head. Strike at its middle, and you will be attacked by its head and tail both. Asked if an army can be made to imitate the shuazhan, I should answer yes. For the men of Wu and the men of Yue are enemies. Yet if they are crossing a river in the same boat and are caught by a storm, they will come to each other's assistance, just as the left hand helps the right. Hence, it is not enough to put one's trust in the tethering of horses and the bearing of chariot wheels on the ground. The principle on which to manage an army is to set up one standard of courage which all must reach. The principle on which to manage an army is to set up one standard of courage which all must reach. How to make the best of both strong and weak, that is a question involving the proper use of ground. Thus, the skillful general conducts his army just as though he were leading a single man, willy-nilly by the hand. The skillful general conducts his army just as though he were leading a single man, willy-nilly by the hand. It is the business of a general to be quiet and thus ensure secrecy. upright and just, and thus maintain order. Oh, upright and just. Quiet, general must be quiet to ensure secrecy, upright and just, and thus maintain order. He must be able to mystify his officers and men by false reports and appearances. And this is a dangerous dress, I'm just saying. I'm not going to do videos after today. He must be able to mystify his officers and men by false reports and appearances and thus keep them in total ignorance. Okay. By altering his arrangements and changing his plans, he keeps the enemy without definite knowledge. By shifting his camp and taking circuitous routes, he prevents the enemy from anticipating his purpose. At the critical moment, the leader of an army acts like one who has climbed up a height and then kicks away the ladder behind him. He carries his men deep into hostile territory before he shows his hand. He burns his boats and breaks his cooking pots like a shepherd driving a flock of sheep. He drives his men this way and that, and nothing knows whither he is going. To muster his host and bring it into danger, this may be termed the business of the general. The different measures suited to the 9 varieties of ground, the expediency of aggressive or defensive tactics, and the fundamental laws of human nature. These are things that must most certainly be studied. The different measures suited to the 9 varieties of ground, the expediency of aggressive or defensive tactics. What is expediency? And the fundamentals of human nature. These are things that must most certainly be studied. Yes, I agree. Expediency. The quality of being convenient and practical despite possibly being improper or immoral. I don't understand in this sentence. How does that work? The quality of being convenient and practical despite possibly being improper or immoral, of aggressive or defensive tactics. Convenience, advantage, usefulness. Is that what it means? So basically, the benefit of aggressive or defensive tactics must be studied. Oh yes, talked about. Yes, I agree. We must talk about these things. We must consider their usefulness. When invading hostile territory, the general principle is that penetrating deeply brings cohesion. Penetrating but a short way means dispersion. When you leave your own country behind and you take your army across neighborhood territory, you find yourself on critical ground. When there are means of communication on all 4 sides, the ground is one of intersecting highways. When you penetrate deeply into a country, it is serious ground. When you penetrate but a little way, it is facile ground. When you have the enemy's strongholds on your rear and narrow passes in front, it is hemmed in ground. When there is no place for refuge at all, it is desperate ground. Therefore, on dispersive ground, I would inspire my men with unity of purpose. On facile ground, I would see that there is a close connection between all parts of my army. On contentious ground, I would hurry up my rear. On open ground, I would keep a vigilant eye on my defenses. On ground of intersecting highways, I would consolidate my alliances. On serious ground, I would try to ensure a continuous stream of supplies. On difficult ground, I would keep pushing on along the road. On hemmed-in ground, I would block any way of retreat. On desperate ground, I would proclaim to my soldiers the hopelessness of saving their lives. That kind of feels to me, like that desperate ground feels to me like, remember the end of season 3, the episode where, I'm not saying spoiler because we know this happened. This is an Attack on Titan more or less video. When Erwin died, that speech, everything there, it made me feel like that was desperate ground. For it is the soldier's disposition to offer an obstinate resistance when surrounded, to fight hard when he cannot help himself, and to obey promptly when he has fallen into danger. We cannot enter into alliance with neighboring princes until we are acquainted with their designs. We are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country, its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps. We shall be unable to turn natural advantages to account unless we make use of local guides. To be ignored of any one of the following 4 or 5 principles does not befit a warlike prince. When a warlike prince attacks a powerful state, his generalship shows itself in preventing the concentration of the enemy's forces. He overawes his opponents, and their allies are prevented from joining against him. Hence, he does not strive to ally himself with all and sundry. He does not strive to ally himself with all and sundry, nor does he foster the power of other states. He carries out his own secret designs, keeping his antagonists in awe. Thus, he is able to capture their cities and overthrow their kingdoms. Bestow rewards without regard to rule. Issue orders without regard to previous arrangements, and you will be able to handle a whole army as though you had to do with but a single man. Confront your soldiers with the deed itself. Never let them know your design. When the outlook is bright, bring it before their eyes, but tell them nothing when the situation is gloomy. Place your army in deadly peril, and it will survive. Plunge it into desperate straits, and it will come off in safety. I get what you're going for, but like, also wasn't it earlier mentioned about, well, I guess, because I'm thinking earlier he talked about basically rushing into things, and that's bad. But this sending them into dire straits or desperate straits, or deadly peril, if it's calculated deadly peril, I guess, yeah, war itself is deadly peril. For it is precisely when a force has fallen into harm's way that it is capable of striking a blow for victory. Success in warfare is gained by carefully accommodating ourselves to the enemy's purpose. By persistently hanging on the enemy's flank, we shall succeed in the long run in killing the commander-in-chief. This is called ability to accomplish a thing by sheer cunning. On the day that you take up your command, block the frontier passes, destroy the official tallies, and stop the passage of all emissaries. Be stern in the council chamber so that you may control the situation. If the enemy leaves a door open, you must rush in. Forestall your opponent by seizing but if he leaves the door open, couldn't that be considered bait? You must rush in. Isn't that bad? Earlier it was written, don't rush. But I guess this is like, it depends from one situation to the next. If they leave a door open and you're sure, and you thought, okay, it's not bait, then let's take the chance. Forestall your opponent by seizing what he holds dear, and subtly contrive to time his arrival on the ground. Walk in the path defined by rule, and accommodate yourself to the enemy until you can fight a decisive battle. At first, then, exhibit the coyness of a maiden until the enemy gives you an opening. Afterwards, emulate the rapidity of a running hare, and it will be too late for the enemy to oppose you. Interesting. The 9 situations. A less interesting chapter than I thought of when I heard the 9 situations, but still interesting. But for me, my biggest take so far, I still have 2 chapters to go, but my biggest take so far is from the book is about how calculating a good general is. See, here's the part that I mentioned. We have heard of stupid haste in war. Cleverness has never been associated with long delays. So it's like, balance it out. Okay. I highlighted just the one part. In war, then, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. So there's a lot of strong stuff that stood out to me in the first 4 chapters, but the deeper we get into the book, the more technical it gets. And like, as someone who, like, how do I say, I've never been anyone's freaking general, so I don't know how to think about these things. But obviously for someone in a general position, whether a real army or many people actually read this book today and apply it to like leadership positions, I guess it would make more sense to them. But I don't know, there's a lot of technical stuff in these last few chapters, and not everything is easy to understand in modern time, you know. And I can try and apply it to Attack on Titan as a little, but it's not all that easy. But that's why I said this is not something you just read once and understand and know. You have to, like, I'd like to, while I'm watching Attack on Titan, maybe read a little bit in my own time as well. Again. Okay, chapter 12, the attack by fire. There are 5 ways of attacking with fire. The first is to burn soldiers in their camp. The second is to burn stores. The third is to burn baggage trains. The fourth is to burn arsenals and magazines. And the fifth is to hurl dropping fire amongst the enemy. So, 5 ways to fight with fire. Burn them in their camp. Burn stores, so like their, I don't think this refers to like bookstores. I think it's like where they store their food and stuff. Third is to burn baggage trains. Fourth is to burn arsenals and magazines, so their weapons and ammo, I guess. The fifth is to hurl dropping fire amongst the enemy, so probably during an advance or something. In order to carry out an attack, we must have means available. The material for raising fire should always be kept in readiness. There is a proper season for making attacks with fire and special days for starting a conflagration. The proper season is when the weather is very dry, obviously. The special days are those when the moon is in the constellations of the sieve, the wall, the wing, or the crossbar. For these 4 are all days of rising wind. In attacking with fire, one should be prepared to meet 5 possible developments. You should obviously make sure the wind isn't blowing in your direction. 1. When fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp, respond at once with an attack from without. 2. If there is an outbreak of fire, but the enemy's soldiers remain quiet, bide your time and do not attack. 3. When the force of the flames has reached... Wait. If I can just figure out how to make this go back. It's just I made it go up too much. Damn it. When the force of the flames has reached in its height, follow it up with an attack, if that is practicable. If not, stay where you are. If it is possible to make an assault with fire from without, do not wait for it to break out within, but deliver your attack at a favorable moment. When you start a fire, be to win the word of it. Do not attack from the leeward, so basically the other way of the wind, otherwise it'll blow you. A wind that rises in the daytime lasts long, but a night breeze soon falls. In every army, the 5 developments connected with fire must be known, the movements of the stars calculated, and the watch kept for the proper days. Hence, those who use fire as an aid to the attack show intelligence. Oh, an aid to the attack. But those who use water as an aid to the attack gain an accession of strength. By means of water, an enemy may be intercepted, but not robbed of all his belongings. Unhappy is the fate of one who tries to win his battles and succeed in his attacks without cultivating the spirit of enterprise. For the result is waste of time and general stagnation. Hence the saying, the enlightened ruler lays his plans well ahead. The good general cultivates his resources. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. And fight not unless the position is critical. No ruler should put troops into the field merely to gratify his own spleen. No general should fight a battle simply out of pique. If it is to your advantage, make a forward move. If not, stay where you are. Anger may in time change to gladness. Vexation may be succeeded by content. But a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. Hence the enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. Ooh. The enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. This is the way to keep a country at peace and an army intact. A kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. So move not unless you can see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. Interesting. I still kind of feel like and this is just my opinion based on what I've read so far, what I've seen from the show, what I remember. But the attack that Eren made and essentially coerced his what are Mikasa and Armin and everyone else to him? Like his fellow fighters? His plan to me was very bad. Because I don't really understand what there was to gain. I think that he just proved to the world what Willie was saying in the first place. And to me, what they did, Mikasa and John, and like what they did, they trapped, and even Eren trapped Reiner, and I'm pretty sure, like, didn't they trap two, like, they showed that they could infiltrate, and they could have gained so much without losing anyone's life in there and without killing any civilians, or at least minimizing any civilian. I feel like they could have gained so much more from a different approach rather than Eren's, to me, haphazard fucking. His approach to me was terrible in that moment. And if he had just been honest about his feelings and talked to the others about what he wishes to gain from such an attack, I think they would have been able to meet somewhere in the middle and maybe make an approach, invade, but they would have gained so much more from a like that was more I don't know what to call that. It was just a like bulldozer, like fucked through everything, you know? And all it did was kill a bunch of innocent people, but people on their side died more than necessary. I don't know, I just think the game, they could have gone about it so much better and they gained much more and lost, well, civilians wouldn't have had to die, but I don't know, I have to rewatch everything again to be more specific, but I just still can't get over that whole decision, that whole plan and how it was carried out. Chapter 13, the use of spies. Raising a host of 100,000 men and marching them great distances entails heavy loss on the people and a drain on the resources of the state. The daily expenditure will amount to 1,000 ounces of silver. There will be commotion at home and abroad, and men will drop down exhausted on the highways. As many as 700,000 families will be impeded in their labor. Hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for the victory which is decided in a single day. This being so, to remain in ignorance of the enemy's condition simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments is the height of inhumanity. Hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for the victory which is decided in a single day. This being so, to remain ignorant of the enemy's condition simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments is the height of inhumanity. I'm not exactly sure I know what that means, but I think I know. So basically, it's what it was said here. Right? In war, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Because lengthy campaigns means so much more lives are lost than necessary, both in army and at home and the state, and because those people supply what the army needs. So it is the height of inhumanity, these lengthy campaigns. One who acts thus is no leader of men, no present help to his sovereign, no master of victory. Thus, what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. Now, this foreknowledge cannot be elicited from spirits. It cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by deductive calculation. Knowledge of the enemy's disposition can only be obtained from other men. Hence, the use of spies, of whom there are 5 classes: local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies. This makes me think of in this case, the people from the island actually have an advantage in the sense that they can send people to the point where we are at in the final part. They could send people there, but it's not easy for them to get people in there and to spy on them. They did it with Reiner and them, but it's not an easy thing to do. They could send a few where I think it's especially at where we're at now, they could infiltrate them. We saw it happen, right? And they could have gained so much information. And I mean, considering where Reiner was mentally, I feel like they could have captured quite a few key people that would have helped them gain an advantage. And at least, or even bargaining, the valuable siege, what is valuable, what did it say? I don't know, I just feel like there's so many other approaches, especially considering we could see them infiltrate so well. But anyway, when these 5 kinds of spies are all at work, none can discover the secret system. This is called divine manipulation of the threads. It is a sovereign's most precious faculty. Having local spies means employing the services of the inhabitants of a district. Having inward spies, making use of officials of the enemy. Having converted spies, getting hold of the enemy's spies and using them for our own purposes. Having doomed spies, doing certain things openly for purpose of deception and allowing our spies to know of them and report them to the enemy. Surviving spies, finally, are those who bring back news from the enemy's camp. Hence, it is that which none in the world Hence, it is that which none in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies. None should be more liberally rewarded. In no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. Spies cannot be usefully employed without a certain intuitive sagacity. They cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness. Without subtle ingenuity of mind, one cannot make certain of truth of their reports. Be subtle, and use your spies for every kind of business. If a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death, together with the man to whom the secret was told. Whether the object be to crush an army, to storm a city, or to assassinate an individual. Assassinate an individual. Because that is another option that I think that we had. It is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides de camp, and doorkeepers and sentries of the general in command. Let me try that again. Whether the object be to crush an army, storm a city, assassinate an individual, it is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides de camp, and doorkeepers and sentries of the general in command. Our spies must be commissioned to ascertain these. The enemy's spies who have come to spy on us must be sought out, tempted with bribes, led away, and comfortably housed. Thus they will become converted spies and available for our service. Can you ever really trust a converted spy, though? But that is what I believe Reiner and them could have become. Remember that guy, who was it? Like, I remember during when they were going, Reiner and them, to infiltrate, one of them was like having doubts, and they could have easily, I think, become like spies, just like Grisha kind of, infiltrated and became a doctor, a trusted doctor. I feel like if they had revealed the truth to any higher ups, such as ideally Erwin, they could have become essentially very valuable to our side, the side we sold for the most of the story. It is through the information brought by the converted spy that we are able to acquire and employ local and inward spies. It is owing to his information again that we can cause the doomed spy to carry false tidings to the enemy. Lastly, it is by his information that the surviving spy can be used on appointed occasions. The end and aim of spying in all its 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy, and this knowledge can only be derived in the first instance from the converted spy. Hence, it is essential that the converted spy be treated with the utmost liberality. Of old, the rise of the Yin dynasty was due to Ai Qi, who had served under the Xia. Likewise, the rise of the Zhou dynasty was due to Lu Ya, who had served under Yin. Hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results. Spies are a most important element in war, because on them depends an army's ability to move. Only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results. I think they lost a big advantage when they were able to infiltrate so successfully and even carry out some things in quiet, like that pit that I think who led them to the pit and they fell in the pit. Like, I think through doing what they did, all of that, I think they, in my opinion, they lost a great advantage. And they essentially perpetuated like, let's say, I don't wanna, cause I don't like talking about maybe this, because people will always say no but this, which is fine. It's just that I want you to know that I'm not saying this thinking, oh yeah, this would have worked, but how do you say, because sometimes people are like, this is the only way, this was the right way. That's how people feel about Aaron. They feel like he is infallible, his way is the right way and the only way. And I get why you feel that way, but and this is what I mean. I can bring up other ways, and you can say, oh, it wouldn't work because of this, it wouldn't work because of this, but neither of us can ever know. So I don't like talking about that, because people will just make up whatever they want to say why that wouldn't work, to basically reaffirm that Aaron's way is the only way, the right way, the infallible God Aaron, you know. But why did I have to defend myself before I even made my point, and now I forgot my point? I know I was talking about how I feel like they gave up an advantage that they had, which was the infiltration, and then they, took the bait of Willie and basically proved his point. I think I wanted to say, like, at that point, there were... You know how Willie, his family joined with... Because as far as we know from history, the Titans were being horrible to the people, right? They were basically forcing them to sleep with them to continue their race, and like, as far as I'm aware from the history, is that the Titans, because they were superior, they kind of ruled over the Marlians. But then Willie's people, family, whatever, they joined the Marlians and they fought back. So my point here is, and then they became like allies, what. And my point here is that we know that they're not just fighting the Titans, the Marlians. There's other wars going on, right? And I feel like if they hadn't proved Willie's point that there are these dangerous, horrible monsters to be feared, to kill, there was a better chance that, because these people, I feel like there's a better chance that they could actually ally themselves, or I don't know, but there's so many other options. But I need to rewatch the final the final season part 1, so that I can, because now I'm really hesitant to say anything, because I feel like I don't remember the details, so I don't want to say something that sounds dumb. But I just feel like things were going so well, actually, before the full-out attack. He had Reiner right where he wanted him. There was those 2 people that fell in the pit. I think that they should not have given up that advantage, at least yet. And to me, that what makes me most angry is just that he kind of forced them to do it, because he knew they wouldn't let him, after doing that, just die. They would come and save him. And that to me is, without talking to them, that frustrates me a lot. Because up until then, They were just like freaking kids fighting for their lives, right? And then he made them murderers. He made them war criminals. Like before that, they were just freaking children fighting in a war that they had no idea why it was even happening. And then because of that, still, you can't say he made them. They still chose, but he knew what they would choose. So like, although I'm not happy with their choice, I'm also not happy. I'm more not happy with his choice. Anyway, so it was a difficult book to get through. A lot of stuff that I don't understand, and I explained why just before I read chapter 13. There's a lot of words here though that it explains things like mire. 'Tis my fate to always, it's a noun, mud. 'Tis my fate to be always ground into the mire under the iron heel of oppression. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So I could go through all of these things. Lynched means killed without a criminal trial by a crowd of people. My favorite parts, though, were probably like the first 4 chapters, which were a bit easier to understand. The next 4 I liked, and today's 5 was really difficult for me because I feel like it was a lot about terrain and. But the spies part was very interesting, like, because that's information is really, really power in war. Because our main, and once again it comes back to that speech in Tanya the Evil, the movie, towards the end, our main purpose should be to win the war, to end it, so not to prolong it, for various reasons, and even this book says so. So to me, if you, and I'm currently watching actually Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood as well, in which, spoiler alert, I'll put my hand down when I'm stopped talking about Full Metal Alchemist. In Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, there's also a war that was waged, but for very bad reasons. And the people waging the war realized, something was wrong, and they didn't want to kill civilians, and da-da-da-da. And, but in the end, they didn't understand what the big ups were doing and deciding, but then later, after the war, one of the main characters, at least for me, how I see him, actually wants to be held accountable because he realizes what they did were war crimes. None of them are proud of it. None of them wanted to do it. They feel that it was wrong, and they want to be held accountable. So to me, to talk about things like war crimes, I still resent being called ignorant because of that. Because if we don't have agreements like that, rules, how can we go on living after the war? It will never end that way. It will be if all is fair in love in war. I mean, war is already something that is difficult to put a stop to. But maybe it's because people think that. Because people think all is fair in love in war. And no one, because the one side hurts that side and does war crimes. And then this side will never forget that. And that side will always resent them for it. And it will just continue. Maybe that's why. But, yeah. Please watch Tanya the Evil. Please watch the movie. It's really good. And I really like that. Just for that one speech. I need to rewatch it myself. Anyway. So, thank you guys for reading with me. My main takeaway is enlightened leader, knowledgeable general. Don't rush, but don't, there's a balance. There's an intelligence to war. And strategizing and how you should do things and why you should do it. So to anyone that ever tells you, oh, you have to do it this way, this is right. It's stupid to talk about that. Like, no. We're not freaking in a war, so we can talk to it about it at length forever until the sun comes up. Like, because there's no one's gonna die right now. But even if you are in war, you can't rush too much, because what did it say here? Haste makes, so there's a balance. Stupid haste in war, but cleverness has never been associated with long delay. So there's a balance. So intelligence, balance, and most importantly, in war, then, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Okay. I won't ramble on further. See you guys on Sunday for the final part. Bye.